Welcome to the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. I'm Allie Rose, certified clinical hypnotherapist and subconscious success coach. I help my clients stop self-sabotage and feel safe to create more wealth, worth, and wellness from within. If you find yourself stuck repeating the same unhelpful patterns in your life, health, business, or relationships, even after all the mindset work, this podcast is for you. Each week, you'll hear deep dives into the hidden beliefs shaping your life and live hypno coaching sessions where someone shifts a block in real time. Because willpower isn't the problem, your subconscious story is. And when you shift it at the root, everything else begins to change. So let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. If you're listening to this episode around the time that it's released, we're closing out 2025 and heading into 2026. And there's a lot of pressure baked into the end of one year and the start of another. Pressure to be different, pressure to do better, pressure to finally have it all figured out, especially if you have been circling the same goal over and over again every year. This episode is an invitation to step out of that pressure. It was previously aired on my friend Amber Annette's podcast, the Business Psychic Podcast, but I think it's so relevant to where we're at in the year right now. We talk about why change doesn't happen just because the calendar changes, and why repeating patterns are often signs of protection rather than self-sabotage. If you're stepping into this new year with hope and maybe a little bit of hesitation or fatigue from starting over with the same goals every year, this conversation will offer a different way forward. One that hopefully starts with compassion and understanding instead of trying to force things to happen. All right, let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of The Business Psychic. I'm Amber Annette, your host, and I am so excited to share with you one of my previous clients, Allie Rose. It's always so exciting to have somebody I have actually worked with before on the show, especially to reflect on how far they have come and what they are now doing out in the world. So I'm excited to introduce you to Allie Rose. She is a certified clinical hypnotherapist and coach who helps her clients get to the root of and rewire their self-sabotaging behaviors and subconscious blocks so that they can create wealth, worth, and wellness from within. I absolutely am so excited to talk about hypnotherapy, the subconscious, all of these things. I've always been so interested, so fascinated, and work with my own clients on these topics. So, Allie, girl, let's get into it. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Amber. I'm so excited to be here with you.
And we were just talking. I think we landed on the number like it's been 8 years or so, maybe
Yeah.
around then since like we've connected and since we work together. So it's so wonderful to see you out in the world, still bringing your gifts to the world. I love it when I see my past clients having so much success. So I'm so excited to have you here. And so just kind of catch me up and share with my audience what made hypnotherapy. Like, I know you used to be kind of more of that like traditional therapist. So what made you kind of make the switch, or let's get into it.
Yeah. So I've always been someone who I would say has been on the fringe of the traditional therapy world. I was doing video sessions before COVID, when people were laughing at me, like, what do you mean you're doing video sessions? All of that. And so I've always explored different modalities within like the therapeutic space, got coach training in 2013. So I'm always looking for ways to take things to the next level, to make things easier, and also for my clients. I'm always the guinea pig. I try things on myself first, and then I bring them to my clients. So what happened with hypnotherapy was for my lifetime, I struggled with depression at times, sometimes would dip into very low spaces. And I did talk therapy myself, and it definitely helps. However, I kept feeling like I was running into this wall. I kept thinking, why am I not able to get over this depression? And so I had been following Marissa Peer and I did a few, it's called RTT hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
I did a few RTT sessions for myself. And let me tell you, my partner looked at me and said, after the third one, she was like, I don't know what happened to you, but you are a completely different person. Like, you look different, you feel different, and I could feel it within myself. I could feel that something had shifted so dramatically within me, like a layer had been peeled off. I could feel it in my body that something had shifted. So, I decided that I wanted to train in RTT. I wanted to bring the same experience that I had with clients, which was they were seeing results, but I wanted them to feel this like, wow, I feel different. I look different into their lives as well. So that's what led me there.
I don't want to slam at all the benefits of traditional therapy, right? However, I am just seeing so many more people be drawn to alternative modalities versus just that traditional talk therapy where you go in once a week or biweekly, see a therapist, you kind of unload and then wash, rinse, repeat kind of week after week or, session after session, ultimately to kind of feel most often, I don't want to say always, but most often, like there's not any progress, like there's not any change or growth, and I think that there are absolutely times where there's a big difference between coaching and therapy, right? And there have been times myself I've gone to traditional therapists in my life, and I always kind of left, not necessarily feeling like worse than I got there, but not always a lot better. Maybe even more frustrated because maybe things got brought to the surface that then didn't get resolution in that moment. What are your thoughts on how to know if you need a traditional therapist or if maybe something like hypnotherapy or something like this is a better solution and option for you? What are some things to look for?
It's hard because there are certain conditions that hypnotherapy is not appropriate for someone with epilepsy, schizophrenia, any type of psychosis, delusions, hallucinations, anything like that, not appropriate for hypnotherapy. However, I'm always going to say that hypnotherapy is a viable option. And what I think can be really good is that because it's intensive and we really drill down to the root, is you could see a hypnotherapist for a session and also have a traditionally trained talk therapist as support to do the follow up work
Yeah.
with that. So I don't know. I think hypnotherapy can be used in any moment. I just think that the results go much deeper and they happen much faster.
Yeah.
So, with the traditionally trained talk therapy, I worked with clients for years, and yes, I saw results, but it was over the span of years.
Right.
With my hypnotherapy clients, I see results within 1 to 3 sessions. It's very different.
And that's because hypnotherapy goes to the root, right? It goes to where those probably limiting beliefs are really starting to take root in your subconscious, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because those are the seeds that were planted so long ago that the roots are very deep for most of my clients. I mean, 30, 40, 50 years of roots.
So how do you know? Like, let's say you're going on in your life, you're going on in your business, and maybe there's just something you can't overcome, or maybe there's something you're trying to achieve and you just can't seem to achieve it.
Mhm.
How do you start to recognize if it is in your subconscious, if it's in maybe actions you're not taking or not taking the right actions? How do you know if it's in your strategy, if it's just what life threw you? Like, how do you really know it's the subconscious that is what is holding you back?
What I would say is when you know that it is a subconscious block is when you have actually tried a lot of strategy work. You've gone at it at a practical level. Maybe you've seen some success, and then you find yourself falling back into some similar patterns and behaviors. And I will
I call
say,
that the loop, right? Like,
it's a
I
loop.
it's a
Absolutely.
loop that you can kinda get stuck on where it's almost I've said this to my clients before, "Is this something new or is this the here we go again?" And what's so interesting is almost always the answer is, "It's here we go again." It's the I'm sure you've heard the term, new level, same devil. meaning that same kind of thorn in the side, same issue. So that's kind of what you're referencing?
Yes, and I will caveat this with I think there's a difference between, shiny object syndrome where you kind of feel like the next thing is going to save your business or the next thing is going to. There's something to be said about someone who has put in a lot of consistent work. I'm thinking I have one specific client who's coming to my mind, and she did a lot of consistent work, right? Strategy work. She was sticking to her plan, and she would see peaks and valleys, and it just felt like she couldn't get to, that next level. So,
Yeah.
she came to me and that changed everything for her business.
I want to stay on this topic of self-development, switching a little bit from hypnotherapy because just recently I have been thinking, having new thoughts about how easy it is to get addicted to self development.
Right.
And can that addiction of, the next book, the next course, the next thing you need to heal, the next thing that's, I don't want to, broken feels like kind of a harsh word, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that there are some people that it's the act of looking for something to be wrong that keeps them in the state of always needing to like fix something and do that self-development work? Or do you think that maybe we are just always really looking for the next layer? Like that's just part of being a human?
I think it's individual for each person. I think that absolutely going into cycles of personal development over and over and over again, looking for what's wrong can be a form of self-sabotage, can be a form of procrastination. It can be a fear of really being visible. Oh, I'm just going to work on this before I do X, right? That can be self-sabotaging. That can be a subconscious block in and of itself. And I think that we are always evolving. I think that, I love visuals of trees and roots. And so I think that sometimes we do get to a certain level and then we do need to go deeper because new things have presented themselves, right? We've worked through a certain level and then new things present themselves for us to work through. But I think we have to give ourselves the time and space to integrate and to allow space for new things to present themselves. If we're constantly working on the same thing and feeling like the same thing, that might be a sign that it is more of a procrastination, more of a self-sabotaging behavior.
Yeah. I I love it when I have a new thought about something, like something I've never thought about before, a new perspective, a shift like that. It it tells me that expansion's happening, my own personal growth is happening, when you have a thought you've never had before. And one of the other ones that I live my life and run my business based on the law of attraction. I always have. And I am always very conscious about thoughts that I'm thinking because, as we have always heard, thoughts create your reality.
Yeah.
And I all of a sudden the other day was like, I don't think that that's true anymore. I think that beliefs create our reality. And there was something that really when I had that realization and that thought not too long ago, I remember I was sitting right where I'm sitting now, and I was like, Holy shit, like, that I've been so worried about the day-to-day, the what I'm thinking right now in the moment versus really getting deeply into those deep roots, those deep beliefs.
Mhm.
How do you start? How do you when you work with your clients, do you let your intuition kind of, like, guide you to maybe what are the deepest ones? Do you kinda start with like, I love the reference of, like, roots, flowers, right? Do you start with the weeds, the easy ones that can kinda be pulled quickly and, maybe make everything kinda look nice, but then still work on the deeper ones that gotta go deeper? Just curious on this.
Yeah. So basically, when someone comes to work with me, right? Because when we're working with the subconscious, we're working with things that we can't necessarily access with our conscious mind. And so I could sit there and I could talk with them. Of course, I have ideas that as I'm listening to their story. But what I always tell people is let's let your subconscious show us. And so typically people come in and I prefer to work with people in a 3-round process. So, and that's really just because a lot of people aren't used to this process, and so the first time around, we work with whatever they're bringing to me. That's the surface level. That's the thing, right? And when we go in, what we do is we let your subconscious show us what the deep-rooted belief is. And a lot of times people are actually surprised what it is. They don't know. They didn't know because if they knew, then they could do something about it. But and then from that session, we can go deeper because something typically emerges from the first session, and then we can work on that. And then something typically emerges from the second. And we get to that really deep rooted layer of things where it's like, okay, we've hit the jack on it.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I worked with a hypnotherapist before years ago. It was amazing. And I sometimes will listen to like guided, pre-recorded, like I bought like a bundle at some point of eh, hypnosis sessions. And if there's something that I'm just not feeling good about or anxious about, I'll listen to those like all night long. I put my phone literally right under my pillow. Oh, this will be curious. I'm curious to hear what you think about this. So I will take my phone and I will put it right under my pillow and listen to that all night long because my phone will just continuously play it. And I think the ones that I have are, maybe 2 or 3 hours long. So it'll just keep playing. And I usually do. I don't sometimes it's one of those things where I'm like, "Why don't I do this every night?" Because I always feel better. Like, usually I can see a shift or something, manifest, rarely or fairly quickly from doing that. So, do you think things like that can also be beneficial to, like, listen to them on repeat? I don't know how I feel about affirmations
Mhm.
as much as, kind of it goes that kind of ties into, it's not just the thoughts you're thinking, it's not just the things you're saying, it's more of those deeper beliefs, which are, really probably creating how your frequency, how you're feeling, your energy, your aura, right? Like those are the beliefs are what's creating that. So do you think listening to affirmations, listening to hypnosis are as effective? Can that help? Can that start with the subconscious rewiring?
Absolutely. I mean, even before I was introduced to RTT, I mean, I went through a divorce. And during that time, part of my process was writing affirmations and doing, I call it gratitude in the future. People call it scripting, things like that.
Mhm.
And I was really, you know, visualizing and writing out what I wanted my life to look like. And what I was doing was recorded I recorded pages and pages and pages of these things. And I would listen to those things all the time, walking in the shower, when I went to bed. And I do believe that that actually started to shift things within who I am as a person. It allowed me to come out of that time period in my life as a different person. So I do believe that part of it is the affirmation, it's looking at the beliefs. Part of it is action and starting to
Yeah.
act into, if I'm saying that this is the person that I want to be, what does the person that wants to be that, what do they do? So to me, they're not in isolation. I don't believe that you can simply read an affirmation, say an affirmation, and life is going to change for you. If the deeper rooted beliefs about yourself are still terrible, you're just like putting something on top of them. And I do believe that part of how we change our perception of who we are is by acting in a different way. It starts to really
Yeah.
solidify the things
The
that
new
you're listening
belief.
to, the new belief, right? I don't, yeah. So it's not just, oh, here's an affirmation, I'm going to say it. It's here's an affirmation. And then it's taking it to the next level of, okay, if I fully loved and appreciated myself, how would I show up differently in my life? What's one small step I can take in that direction?
Yeah. I'm always curious, where do you think that most of these deeply rooted beliefs, like, really take hold? I intuitively kind of always get a sense, like, for my clients, right? Like, I call it psychic hypnosis in a way, right? Like, I feel like I just kind of can get a general sense of a timeline of, like, when maybe something happened in their life. And it always seems to be young, like really young ages. I would say between the age of maybe 4 and 10, maybe at the most like 12 is where most of the things that I feel like they're stuck on struggling now started then. They started, I guess, at least to take root then. What do you think it takes for something to truly take root and become that belief where it's starting to become a hindrance, where it's starting to be a block, it's starting to be it's starting to be becomes part of your identity and behavior?
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think between the ages of 0 to 10 is where most of this happens. More than anything, it's so things happen in our lives, and more than anything, it's the meaning that we make of them.
Mm,
So, because something could happen to you and something could happen to me, and I might make one meaning about it and you may make another. But
yeah.
that's really what I do when I go in with my clients and I take them back to 3 different scenes that are all to do with the cause, root, and reason for why, whatever they are coming in for. And we go back to these scenes, and the biggest thing is, what were they feeling? And what did they make it mean about themselves, the world, and other people? And then we connect the dots because typically there's a theme between the 3 scenes and then how it's connected to what's the present issue is. And so really more than anything, it's like, what did this cause you to believe about yourself, the world, and other people? Now, I can look at their scenes and I might have made different meaning about that, but they made this meaning about what happened to them. And so therefore, that is how the belief got planted in their life.
And so from there, when you get to that root, then do you do like inner child work on that? Do you have like your own kind of like signature way, your proprietary process that you do at that moment with them?
Yeah, there's a bit of inner child work. So, first, what we do is we go to the part of them that created this, either this block or this belief. And we ask that part, what's your role? What's your function? What's your purpose? What's your intention? And we hone in on like this part of you created this belief or this behavior for a certain purpose at this time in your life. How amazing that this part of you created this to protect you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To help you in some way. However, you're no longer 5 years old, and we need to show this part of you. We need to upgrade it. We need to show this part of you that you're not 5 years old. And I have people walk through, okay, now how is this belief? How is this behavior? How is it no longer serving you? It was then, right? And we can see because it's just told us, but it's no longer serving you anymore. So what we do is we ask the part itself, what would it need in order to feel safe enough to leave? And if it doesn't wanna leave, because what I find is that sometimes protective parts, and if they've been protecting us for a very long time, they're hesitant to leave, then we give it a new role. We upgrade it, we give it I always say we give it a promotion. What would be a better job for it to have if it doesn't really wanna leave you, if it still wants to stay with you? Let's give it a new role.
Mm,
And then we go back in, and I have them as the adult that they are now, step back into the scenes and reparent that child
yeah.
that whatever happened in the scene happened to them, and what do they need to hear knowing what you know now as an adult?
Yeah. I I I love how you tie that to the meaning that everybody, attaches for themselves. Like we could, that's why a lot of times you could have a brother and a sister that live in the same house, experience the same things, and yet remember things very differently.
Right.
And that's because they're both attaching different meaning to different experiences and circumstances and people. So I love the way that you word that. Have another, as you were talking, do you think that there is a difference between self protection and self sabotage?
No, I think that they are
The same.
because our mind's entire job, our brain's entire job is to keep us alive. And so I think that self-sabotage is a form of self-protection,
Yeah.
and
I
it just
think,
shows up differently.
I mean, of course, like kind of in, again, like the self development space, right? Like we hear self sabotage so much. And that can kind of be a little kind of a little scary if you think about it, right? Like, if you think, like, that feels like it has a little bit more maliciousness to it, self-sabotage, like and it feels like a little bit more like created. And I think shifting the language from self-sabotage to, self-protection, it can kind of bring the energy to not be so fearful about doing
Right.
some of that mindset work, doing things like hypnosis, in my opinion, because I mean, I don't think anybody wants to be self-sabotaging, right?
No.
I actually think that causes a lot of fear, and especially as entrepreneurs, I think in the space, like, am I self-sabotaging? Am I keeping myself from doing this? And I think that can take you down a very different rabbit hole versus if you're aware that it's actually just self-protection. And I don't know, do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I mean, so in the process that we call in RTT world RFPI, which is when we tap into that part and we look at the role, function, purpose, and intention. That's really what we're doing is I ask every client, I say, how do you feel about this part of you, the self-sabotaging part? Often it's like, I hate it. I want it to go away. It's blocking me, like all these things. And then by the end, the purpose of me saying, how do you feel about it at the beginning? And then when we get to the end, once we've asked it what its role, function, purpose, and intention is to bring some compassion to that part to
Yeah.
see, okay, wow, you've really been trying to keep me safe. I understand now why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, why this part of me has been doing this thing because the end of the day you've been trying to keep me safe. And that's where we thank the part, right, for trying to keep the person safe. Like we have a whole kind of shift around how you feel about this part of you and that allows you to engage with that part of you differently moving forward.
Mm, yeah. I know my very first book that I read as an entrepreneur was The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Yeah.
Did you ever
Yeah,
read that
long
one?
long ago. Yes.
Long, long, long ago. Well, get it out, dust it off, and reread it, because that's one of those books I feel like every time I read it, I have, like, a new aha awareness, you know, I I'm a different person every time I read it, I feel like. So, but that is one thing that always just kind of, I don't know, there's something about, I'll say, it just kind of gives me the ick factor when I think of self-sabotage, like, that just has never felt right. So I love shifting to the language of, like, self-protection versus self-sabotage. So, what do you think, in addition to hypnotherapy, what are you kind of seeing out there that, people are being drawn to for, like, other modalities, or, how can people really start focusing? I feel like mindset is such a broad word, right? Like, there's so many different modalities, but, you know, what would be something that would be complementary to hypnotherapy, in your opinion?
So basically, with hypnosis, it's totally natural, totally normal. We go in and out of it all the time throughout the day. We don't realize it. We
Mhm.
just don't call it that. But I think it's shutting that inner critic, the voice that's always narrating, is really shutting that down and allowing space for other things to get there. So like in there, like more positive things. So I think that anything that can take you from a heightened state down into a more grounded state, whether that's, breath work, whether that's just regular meditation, anything that takes your state from a place of like hyperarousal down is going to be helpful to allow you to see your world differently, allow you to hear things differently.
Yeah.
Because so many of us, if we go back to the self protection, so many of us have this part that's in constant high alert and that's really when the self-sabotaging or self-protective behaviors come up is when we're in a state of high alert. And so I think being able to calm your nervous system down, I think that that helps.
Yeah, and again, like, the nervous system, I mean, I see so much. I pay attention to trends. I mean, I'm sure you have too. I've been in this industry for over 11 years, and to see all the different, and maybe trend is not the right word, but, right now I'm seeing a lot around the nervous system regulation. I do think that so many people operate, I know myself, fight or flight, and so to be able to sometimes even bring that down just to get present enough, to be able to then even be able to do hypnosis. I think sometimes you almost have to get yourself in the receiving state to be able to receive from any of these types of mindset modalities. Do you agree with that?
I find that you can do things that help that, obviously. I'm a big fan of bilateral tapping. It's something
Mm.
that is used in EMDR, but you can just use it in general to kind of bring your state down. Yeah, and if we go back to the metaphors here, it's like preparing the soil so that the seeds can be planted, right? Like, you have to prepare
Yeah.
yourself in some ways so that you're ready to receive that, which is why listening to things when you're sleeping is actually really great because your body is already going into that relaxed state, so you have to do a lot less preparing. I often tell my clients to listen to their custom recordings that they get from me, either when they first wake up because your mind's coming right out of that state, or what as they're going to sleep because your mind's going into that state, right? It takes a lot more when you're in the middle of your day and you've maybe had like, a fight with one of your colleagues or something's going on with your kid. It takes a little bit more grounding to get into the space to receive in those states.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I used to have a beautiful practice of being able to get really present in the mornings. I call it coffee with the universe. I also have been I went through a divorce. So, and during that, like I lost almost kind of the ability to get really present like that. And I miss that. I crave that. I sometimes don't know how to get back to being able to go that deep and be that connected, be that present. Do you think that hypnosis is something that can help you with mindfulness, getting present? It's not always necessarily something to get to like those deeper subconscious beliefs, but can also help you with things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because again, it goes back to shutting off the narrator, shutting off the inner critic, just
Yeah.
turning that down a little bit so that you can get more present with yourself, with your thoughts. So, yeah, I think that it doesn't always have to be about deep rooted work. It can just be about, I want to just quiet my mind a little bit so
Yeah.
I can be more present.
Yeah. So, and one last question here.
Yeah.
So, from a hypnosis perspective, like I shared, I always listen to it at night because that's what even he says. He's like, make sure you're not driving, make sure you're lying down. Are there any, are there hypnosis tracks, things like that you can listen to, like, as you're going throughout your day that are more on, like, the subliminal level, but aren't gonna make you go to sleep, aren't gonna can kinda be running in the background while you're also active and, going throughout your day? Or are they really best when you're in a state of being relaxed or going to sleep, that kind of thing?
So here's the thing, right? We live in a very busy culture. Everybody's busy. I always tell my clients it's best, the track that I give them, it's best if you can be sitting or lying down, if you can have your eyes closed. However, I never want that to be a barrier. I'd rather you listen to the recording at some point throughout your day. And so I always just say, do not listen to it while you're doing anything where you could hurt yourself. Do not listen to it, while you're driving. However, if you want to listen to it while you're taking a walk, absolutely. Walking in and of itself is bilateral stimulation. If you want to listen to it while you're doing the dishes, while you're doing laundry, while you're doing maybe your morning routine, if that's going to help you listen to the recording, go for it.
That's what matters.
I always say the best time to listen to it is going to be whenever you can get into that state, but I also understand that not everyone, has the ability, depending on what their lifestyle looks like, to get into that state every single day, and so I'd rather they listen to it just in general, or I might say double it up, listen to it in the morning while you're doing your morning routine or walking, and then if you can, like, listen to it at night while you're making dinner or something like that, right? So, the point is to just I think to just listen to it, right? Because the subconscious mind is always listening, right? So, yeah.
And how do you I know I said one final question, but as you're
Okay.
talking ahead of I can't I've always I think I have just always been so fascinated from when I was like a little kid, right? Like even like in high school, my favorite class were always the psychology classes, right? Like the mind has just always been so fascinating to me. And then as a psychic, being able to see both pieces, right? The spiritual side, the energy side, and then this, how we just need we need the two working together. Just so anyway, I've always been fascinated. So this episode could go on forever. Okay, so this might be the last question. depending on the answer. But, so if you start to do this work, right? You start to work on your subconscious. You go through hypnosis, you go through all these different modalities. How do you really know that that belief has been rewrote? How do you really know you made the breakthrough? You've had your up level, like whatever you want to call it. Like how do people know that?
I would say that there's two parts to this. The first is that I always say that hypnotherapy is about creating more ease in your life. And what that means is that you have less resistance to doing the things that you know that you want to do. So that's how you can start to tell that there's less noise, there's less resistance, and then you see that the behavior has changed. So it just becomes easier for you to do the thing that you want to do. You don't have to think about it. It feels natural whenever you do it. I think that that's how you know that the belief has been rewritten.
And then I'm also drawn back to like where you kind of started, where your partner even said to you, though, you look different, you feel different, something's changed. So you there's probably maybe like a lightness that can kind
Mhm.
of come over like that. I mean, I think sometimes the things that have been with us for a long time, they're heavy. Those roots
Absolutely.
get really heavy.
Right. Absolutely. And so I would say that that as well, right? You might be able to feel a difference. I have felt the difference in my own life. Other people might reflect back to you, like my partner did. I've had friends reflect to me, you look different. There's something different about your face, about your countenance. Yeah, it's heavy carrying old beliefs that are no
Yeah.
longer serving you. So
Yeah.
when you release them, when you rewrite them, you look lighter, you feel lighter.
Yeah. I have to kind of give myself like a moment here to remember how much work I've done. I often joke with my friends and my friends often say to me, they're like, Are you living like your best, like Benjamin Button life? Right? Because I just turned 44. And when I tell you I look younger at 44 than I did at 21, it's incredible to me. And I know, I guess I just never realized like until this moment that's probably a lot of it. It's all of the the work, right? The self-work, the mindset work that starts to make you feel younger, lighter, at ease. It's not the other things. It's, not the new makeup I switched to. It's not that I decided to always be blonde instead of brunette. I mean, it is really probably the internal work that shows up the most on the external.
Yeah, absolutely. I always believe that like what's inside is always going to come out in some way, whether it
Yeah.
is through the way that you look or it's the way that you interact with people or just the way that you show up in the world. What's going on internally for you is going to show up somehow externally, right?
Yeah.
And so once you shift what's internal, what comes out of you will shift.
I just I love it when I can have like I'm having an in the moment here perspective shift, right? Like I think it's often those external things that we look at though first are the
Right.
reasons why things are changing.
Mhm.
Now, I would say with the exception of, you know, your physical body, right? Like I've started going to the gym more. Of course, that's
Right.
going to change my physical body. But that the energy shift that you can clearly feel from people, that's from doing that's from doing the inner work. That comes from there. So, thank you for that I appreciate
Yeah,
I always love it when I can be inspired, when I can have a perspective shift when something like that happens. So, thank you for that.
absolutely.
Awesome. This was so good. I know my audience is going to love it. I enjoyed every second and am just so grateful that you had the ability and time to come and share this with us. So, thank you so much, Allie. And to all of my listeners, thank you so much for being here. And now it's your turn. Go be in your gift.
As this year comes to an end and you step into a new one, I hope you take this with you. You don't have to become a new version of yourself overnight. You don't have to force change or prove anything to anyone. If this episode helped you see your patterns as self protection rather than self sabotage, now you have the opportunity to move forward differently. Let this be the year that change feels safer. Let this be the year the changes you desire to make actually stick. And if this episode helped you see a pattern more clearly and you want to explore what it would look like to work with it at the root, that's exactly the kind of work that I do. We look at where the pattern started, what it's been protecting you from, and how to help it soften so change doesn't feel like a constant battle. If you want to explore whether that kind of support would be helpful for you, you can head to shiftyourstorypodcast.com and schedule a connection call. I'd absolutely love to explore what's coming up for you and see if working together feels like a fit. I'm sending you so much love and gratitude. Until next time. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to send me a message on social media. I'm at the Allie Rose on both Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to be coached on a future episode or explore what it would look like to work with me one-on-one, head over to shiftyourstorypodcast.com. And if you never want to miss an episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review. It helps more people find this work. Until next time, keep shifting, keep growing, and most importantly, I want you to remember that your story isn't set in stone. You always have the power to shift it.